Welcome to Cravings Control for Fat Loss. I'm your host, Laura Cavallo, former sugar binger, overeater, and yo-yo dieter turned fat loss and cravings coach for hundreds of busy women. Here at Cravings Control for Fat Loss, I'll be sharing mindset, movement, and metabolism strategies for those who are ready to ditch the fat diet cycle and slim down without counting calories, tracking points, or giving up any of the foods they love. Get ready to embrace progress over perfection, grace over guilt, and bring curiosity and learning to the inevitable ups and downs of your life. Expect a decrease in your cravings while seeing and feeling an improvement in how you look, how you feel, and your overall quality of life. I am so excited you're here, boo. Let's get started. Welcome to today's episode, and I'm so excited to be speaking with Leah Byrd, who is a holistic menstrual health educator. She's based out of St. Petersburg, Florida, and she's a self-declared flower child who loves food, music, and big-bellied laugh. She nerds out on all things period, wellness, and women's health. Her goal is to help women learn how to use their periods as a biomarker of health and fill in the gaps for all the things we didn't learn in the health class. With this knowledge, she hopes women feel more empowered to live their best lives, develop body literacy, and give informed consent when making health choices. She was led by her own journey of quitting hormonal birth control after feeling like crap on it for years, then dealing with out-of-whack periods that she thought were just normal for a really long time. She loves helping women discover how to make their periods their superpower, especially in a world that has taught us to make our period the enemy. Give this episode a listen and let us know what you think. Welcome to another episode of Cravings Control for Fat Loss. My name is Laura, your cravings coach, and today we are talking to Leah Byrd, who is a holistic menstrual educator, and her Instagram account is Cervical Discourse. So welcome in, Leah.
Hi, thank you so much.
How are you?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to discuss menstrual health, women's health, and all. Like when I sent over, like, what do you want to talk about? You're like, we could talk about anything. And then you listed off like 12 things. I'm like, I didn't know there were so many things that when it comes to period and menstrual health. So I'm going to be learning a lot today as well. And at least maybe you could shed light on this. I feel like women's health and menstrual health in particular didn't really start getting a lot of eyeballs until more recent years, right? Do you have that feeling, or am I just disconnected from the topic?
Yeah, no, I think you're pretty spot on. It's actually something that I wasn't aware of until a couple of years ago. And then even like, I know just when it comes from like a research standpoint, even women, their physiology hasn't even been in mainstream studies around health and things like that, like since I think the first time they studied major research was in 1993. And even to this day, if there's like a new diet that comes out or this that comes out, there really is not much inclusion around women's physiology. And it's something I talked to my mom about. I'm like, did you know anything about your cycle? And she's like, no idea. So I would say it's definitely very new.
Wow. Is your mom open to learning about that sort of stuff?
She is. Yeah, definitely. I think she is in menopause now. And every time I tell her something, she's like, wish I had known that.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And menopause is such a tough time period for so many women. It's the first time your body changes since you were 13, 14, 15. I mean, unless you have a child, you know, you're in childbearing years and you give birth and have children. But yeah, I feel like that's when like your period goes away, and it's just so much change, and you're like, oh, this new phase of, am I still a woman? Like, what makes me a woman is, you know, how do I deal with this? How do I handle with this? So yeah, we're going to get into all of these details and juicy conversations. So where are you coming from? Where do you live? You're in Florida, right?
Yes. Yep. I'm in Tampa Bay. I have been here about 2 years and was on the West Coast is where I grew up in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
You're like on the opposite corner of the country now.
Exactly. I needed the sunshine. Little did I know that was part of my hormone journey too, but it was probably the best decision I've made. So.
Wow. So you've been here for 2 years. So you left Portland 2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. And what do you miss about the Northwest?
Honestly, Portland specifically has some of the best food I've had within the entire U.S. So that's a little bit harder to come by here in Florida, but I don't miss it being gray 9 months out of the year. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really tough. That's really tough. My mom and my aunt actually live outside of Portland by Tigard.
Oh yeah.
Tigard?
Tigard.
Yes. And well, my mom's moving there soon. And I'm like, it's going to be not a lot of sunshine. And she's like, I know, but I miss the greenery. And she lives in Phoenix now. So I'm excited to go visit them because I love exploring and seeing different parts of the country and the world. But I don't think I would be able to physically manage being someplace that didn't have sunshine, hence also living in Florida like you. I realized how much the sunshine affected me when I moved from New York to Los Angeles. And we would have one rainy day in LA and I would be so low motivation. I would have no energy. I wouldn't want to do anything. And I was like, oh my God, this is what was happening to me when I was living in New York. Who knew?
Yeah.
So now here we are in the sunshine 24/7. So we talked a little bit about where you grew up. Tell me your childhood experience growing up as it relates to food and fitness and nutrition and your period health. Kind of take your time walking us through kind of your experience as a kid with all that.
Yeah, so where to start? So I was a military kid. So before we were officially in Oregon, where I mainly grew up, we moved around a lot. And my parents are originally from the South, from Alabama, which, as you know, the Southern food is very much a thing. Both my parents love being in the kitchen. And so no matter where we moved, I just remember always being in the kitchen with my parents, and it was just really fond memories. And then when we did move to Oregon, my mom got on a really big health kick. I mean, she always cooked pretty healthy with a Southern flair, but she definitely expanded when we got to Oregon and was always trying new things. Was always eat your vegetables, that kind of thing as a kid. And then as a kid, they were giving me cookbooks, and it's just something that I always I have very fond memories associated around food. I consider myself a foodie. I think it's the way people express their culture and bring people together. And I just love everything that food does. And then growing up, it was one of those things too, especially because I have a little brother, and I'm seeing my mom go through gaining weight, after the baby, and then just her getting comfortable in her body after that and making different decisions about her body so that way she would feel good, because she didn't feel good for a long time. And so she would go to fitness classes, kickboxing classes and Zumba, and she would always take me with her, probably starting when I was about 12 years old.
Fun.
And it was so much fun. I hated PE class. You could never, gym in school, I was stop yelling at me to run a mile. This is not a thing.
I feel like that was all of us. We were no, we don't want to get sweaty. We just did our hair this morning. And you and I are curly girls, so the sweat is a real thing with the curly hair.
Thing. I can still smell the Victoria's Secret body spray in the locker room. I'm this is too much.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but going to the gym with my mom was always fun. And so actually for when I was a senior in high school, we had to do a senior project. And my project, I decided, was to become a Zumba instructor, which was fun. So I have pretty positive view around fitness and eating well and things like that. But then when I moved out on my own for the first time after I was 18, I moved out. I'm oh, I'm in charge of making and getting my own food now. And even though I have fond memories in the kitchen, I'm what do I even do with that information?
Right.
Yeah. So then that kind of got me down my own health journey, just because I realized the way I eat very much impacts the way that I feel after I moved out. Because I was when you're on your own for the first time, it's mac and cheese and chocolate chip cookies all day.
Well, that's such a departure from your current social media and what you put on Instagram and obviously how you eat and cycle sync, because all the food you post, I'm that looks so delicious. Oh my goodness. I need to make this. I need to make this. That looks so good. Oh, this like papaya for breakfast. I haven't thought of that. So what an evolution.
Yeah, honestly, I like to play with food. I'm a big believer, play with your food. So there's been a lot of trial and error, but I think just like realizing how much food just impacts like my mood is something I was like, but I also want it to be delicious.
1000%.
Right? So, yeah.
You were saying food impacts how you feel. And so that was kind of your first experience having to start eating and moving on your own and figuring out how to kind of adult when you turned 18.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And referring it back to menstrual health, which is what this is all about, also at the same time of me doing this, I guess I should say I grew up in a home. It was a great home, but it had a religious connotation around it. So as I moved out for the first time, I'm learning how to feed myself for the first time. I also became sexually active and was like, okay, I need to get on birth control, but I don't want anybody to know. So I had gone on birth control, and my sex education up to that point really had just been, when I was hitting puberty, my mom came into my room. She handed me a pad and she's like, this, like, you're going to start bleeding. This is normal. This is like becoming a woman. And that was about that. And then they kind of do the same thing to you in school. And you get the health class of like, here's the anatomy and here's birth control options, but they were all hormonal options and that's stuff that never really sunk in for me either. I just knew when I moved out, I was like, the pill seems pretty popular. I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood and I'm just going to get it. And it was a pretty quick appointment. And I really had no education up to that point. And so as that evolved, I was on birth control for quite a long time. And then again, just was like this, like, I don't feel good. I just feel like I was taking a pill to be able to have intercourse safely, but I didn't want intercourse when I was on it. And when I would have it, it was like very painful. So let's fast forward like probably 5 years after I'd been on the pill. I was in a coffee shop talking to one of my friends, and she told me she uses natural birth control. And I'm just like, yeah, like whatever that is.
Yeah, sounds like a gimmick.
Yeah. And so she showed me like a thermometer that she uses that lets her know when she's fertile and when she's not fertile. I was like, I'm going to try this out. So I got off birth control and I bought a thermometer where basically it's called the Daisy. It's not my preferred method now, but it is a thermometer that tracks when you're fertile based on like ovulation, because your metabolism goes up after ovulation. So it's tracking that, and it's also using like an algorithm based on previous information you've entered into the thermometer to detect when you could be fertile. So those days you just avoid intercourse or use a backup method. So I was using that for a while. I felt so much better after I got off the pill. I was like, oh,
wow.
I'm like, sex is like not the worst thing in the whole world, which is what I thought it was up to that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then that really just is kind of like snowballed to where I am now. It's kind of like a decade of a journey, but
wow. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing all of that. So do you feel like, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit on some of the things that you brought up. So do you feel like your current food influence now has a little bit of like Southern charm to it, or a little bit of influence from Oregon, like how you eat now? Or is it more like all fresh Florida fruits and veggies?
It's very much a mix, because I would say it doesn't have a lot of Southern influence. It has a lot of Portland influence. What I loved about Portland is like you could get Thai food on one corner, you could get, Arabic food on the other, you could get just like all of these different flavors, and everything there is very much farm to table. So it was like fresh local ingredients. And I also love to travel. So anytime I travel, I'm always looking at what flavors they're using and watching a ton of like Anthony Bourdain. And so that's where I feel like a lot of my inspiration comes from in terms of cooking, is like, I love cultures that use like herbs and spices and like things that come from the earth to make their food taste good. So my food definitely has more of like that kind of influence.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's one of the best ways to make your food tasty instead of adding all these sauces or extra caloric things, which, extra caloric things aren't necessarily bad, but sometimes it can actually mask the real flavor of some of these herbs and spices that you're actually using. So I wish I knew like what combinations of herbs and spices went well together, because I don't. I feel like I should get a book on that. Something that you brought up that I think is a really important conversation, shifting away from the nutrition aspect, is sex education for young women and for young men. Do you have an opinion on when sex education should begin and how that sex education should be delivered, and kind of how much kids should be told at a teen age range? And yeah, just your overall take on that.
Yeah, I think it's something that should probably start around the time of puberty, or maybe a year leading up to puberty. Just being like, the normal talk of like your body's going to start changing. But I think something that should be mainstream, especially in classrooms around sex education, is giving the full gambit of information. So, for example, tracking your cycle. And when I refer to tracking your cycle, I'm talking about you're looking at the quality of your period. You are taking basal body temperature, which tracks your metabolism, which can help you identify ovulation. And then you're tracking cervical mucus, because all of these specific things give so much information about our body from a health perspective. And I think if we especially teach women how to track their cycle from an early age, I always refer back to like brushing your teeth. Like if someone came up to the street, right, visited you on the street right now when you're 25 years old and hands you a toothbrush, you're going to be like, I've never seen a toothbrush before. Like, you want me to put this in my mouth? Like, this is crazy. And I think if we start the conversation around tracking your cycle from a health perspective, when you're entering puberty, it kind of just fills in the gaps of the conversation around sex education. Also for boys to know that the physiology of a woman is different than their physiology. I think everybody can just benefit from learning how their hormones work so they can make informed decisions for themselves. And yes, those hormones very much impact our sexual lives, but they also impact our daily lives, whether you're having intercourse or not. And I think that's the big piece of the conversations that's missing, is like, if you talk about sex, it means that you're going to go out and have it. Not necessarily. That's a very siloed way of thinking, because now you're missing out on all the health benefits that come from these sex hormones when you enter puberty. So,
yeah, that is sort of the crux of the conversation, is like, okay, we're talking about physiology and hormone health and anatomy and reproduction. And then people automatically think like, well, you're talking about sex and we shouldn't talk about that, or it's dirty, or that should be reserved for behind closed doors. But I think now, with the advent of so much more information out there, I think it would be ignorant to think that people aren't getting their hands on both positive information or truthful information and also negative information, right?
yeah.
And on top of educating kids, I think we also need to be educating adults and parents and distilling some of the stigma around sex education and menstrual health and hormonal health, instead of just putting our kids directly on birth control, right? And that's something that happened to me at an early age too. I got on birth control when I got my first boyfriend in high school, and my mom wanted to protect me when I started being sexually active, and same thing for her and my grandparents and her grandparents before that. It sort of passed on. We've taken just those patterns and continued on, but now we have a lot more information at our disposal. So let's dive in a little bit into the menstrual cycle. Previously, we were talking about the Fertility Awareness Method. And before we start talking about that, can you just walk us through the 4 different phases of the cycle and when we can expect each one of them? And then let's talk about the fertile window, which I never knew you could only get pregnant 5 days of your period. I thought it could happen all the time, but that's not true. And, another myth that has gone around about periods and sexual and reproductive health. So let's start there.
Yeah, no, that's something that I didn't know either. And I'm like, you're kidding, right? So basically, when I talk about the cycle, I think sometimes because there is we're filling in the gaps of information, I'm not just talking about when you're bleeding. Your cycle starts on the first day of your bleed, and then it goes all the way up to your next bleed. So for women with a healthy cycle, that's usually every 24 to 36 days. So your cycle, it is differentiated by 4 different phases. And each phase basically changes based on your changing hormonal, metabolic, and biological needs, I should say. And so the first phase, it's called the follicular phase. So essentially, this follicular phase starts the first day after you're done bleeding. They say that the phases mimic seasons. So the follicular phase is like your inner spring in your body. And this is the time where because your period's like hibernation, right? So you're just done with your period. So the follicular phase, your energy starts rising again because estrogen is rising in this phase. It's preparing for a whole new cycle. So this phase, it stimulates your brain differently, you start to become more creative. Estrogen suppresses appetite, so you may not be as hungry, but you still need to eat. So you want to be eating spring-like foods, like light, fresh foods, sprouted grains, things like that. And so the follicular phase usually lasts about 7 to 10 days. And then you enter the ovulatory phase, which is your inner summer. And that lasts actually only about 3 to 4 days. It's most identified by a very heavy presence of cervical mucus that's most likely more slippery and stretchy compared to the other days in your cycle. And so you're in your ovulatory phase, and your hormones in this phase are at their highest point. So you have so much energy. It's your most extroverted time of your cycle, and this is the time you also have a surge of testosterone. So it's a good time to do really intense workouts, and your sex drive is probably going to go up and things like that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you said in the follicular phase, can you talk about the mucus in that phase and then how it differentiates from the ovulatory? I know you said it's more slippery, but is it clear or is it white? Can you clarify?
Yeah. So basically, anytime you're paying attention to cervical mucus, the first thing you'll pay attention to is the sensation. And then you'll pay attention to how it looks second. So when you're in the follicular phase, you're going to start probably about halfway through the phase. You'll start to experience what's called non-peak mucus. So this is mucus that it's usually easier to identify by sensation first. You're going to feel a little bit more of a slip and slide when you're using toilet paper, when you're walking, when you're moving, things like that. It can also look white or clear or pasty.
Okay.
It can often look like hand lotion. Every woman is a little bit different, but basically the more, I should say, lotiony it gets, the more clear and stretchy. Clear and stretchy is more of an ovulatory cervical mucus.
Okay.
But basically, the more alkaline it becomes, it shows that your estrogen is rising. So
got it.
Estrogen is why you have this cervical mucus. And so as your cervical mucus rises in that phase, your estrogen rises in that phase, your cervical mucus will rapidly start to change. So it'll go from creamy to slick to slippery to egg white. When you get to the very slippery to egg white, you've entered your ovulatory phase.
Got it. Okay. I never knew that there was a reason for different cervical mucus until a few years ago. And I always thought it was something that was wrong with me. I'm like, oh, I have a UTI or yeast infection or something's going on. I got to go to the doctor. But lo and behold, there's a reason for it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's wild. And it holds so much information. So especially as you are in the ovulatory phase, it's going to be really stretchy and abundant and just so noticeable. And that's just because estrogen is at its highest point, and it has to get to that point to trigger ovulation. If it doesn't get to that point, ovulation can't really occur. So that's why you see this rapid progression of mucus through ovulation, essentially. What happens after ovulation is you enter what's called the luteal phase. This is the longest phase of your cycle. It's usually 11 to 18 days. It signals like your inner fall. And your mucus is going to change because what happens in the luteal phase is your body starts to produce a hormone called progesterone. And progesterone, essentially, it dries up that very slippery mucus. And at the base of your cervix, you actually form what's called a mucus plug. This is part of our immune system. So it basically keeps sperm out, it keeps bacteria out, and things like that. During the luteal phase, you still may notice some discharge. This is usually just the way the vagina is cleaning itself, and it's completely normal. But if your mucus does start to become like yellow or green, or it takes on an odor or anything like that, that could be information that you do have like an infection of some kind. Mm-hmm. Those are the things you want to look for from a health perspective.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. And so that luteal phase is the longest, and I've heard it broken up into early luteal and late luteal. Mm-hmm. Are there big differences between early and late luteal phase in terms of maybe how you might feel or certain activities that you can do, or in general, is the luteal phase kind of just one unit, one time period?
I would say you can definitely split it up into two phases. So especially because it's such a long phase. So the first half of your luteal phase essentially is you still have a lot of leftover estrogen and testosterone now with the help of progesterone. So you still have a good amount of energy. I call it momager energy. Like you are delegating tasks, you're doing your own stuff, like you're also like nesting at the same time. Like you're kind of just spinning a lot of plates at one time, and you have the biological backing to do that, especially if you are taking care of your blood sugar and your stress. If those two things are out of balance, your luteal phase is it can be miserable. So those are the things that you're focusing on in that phase. Your metabolism also goes up, so your body's requiring more calories. And so as you move into the later part of your luteal phase, so, you could even say like 4 to 5 days before your period starts, you're going to notice that energy start to slow down. And if your hormones are balanced, this is a pretty easy transition from a physicality standpoint. You're probably just going to start to become more introverted. You're going to start, tying up loose ends because you're going to know your period's coming, and who wants to do anything on their period, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's also a time to do like more slow, gentle movement. So the first half, you can do a lot of strength training. The second half, you're going to slow down a little bit and just really tune into what your body's asking. So if you feel like you can do strength training that day, perfect. If you feel like you need more rest days, listen to your body. That's a really sensitive time to just see what your body's asking of you physically. Mm-hmm. And it's also, this is, I say, the window that's really, really important to make sure you start nourishing yourself really well, because your hormones are basically like, they're super high, right? And then they're going to drop. You want to cushion that drop with nutrition and lifestyle. Otherwise, it's going to feel like you're going to face plant when your period's about to come.
Fascinating. And that drop in hormones happens on the first day of your period or 4 to 5 days before?
So the drop usually starts it can start 4 to 5 days. However, the drop that signals menstruation is usually about 24 hours before.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. And I have some clients who their periods have improved a lot since working with me, just improving nutrition and moving more, but tuning into their bodies, pushing themselves when they feel like it or pulling back, sleep, stress management. But there's some months that are better than others. Some months periods really, you don't even notice it. You're like, oh, I got my period. That's great. I don't have any PMS symptoms. And for anyone that's listening who is like, that sounds like heaven, how can I do that? You totally can. You have to support some of your lifestyle factors. But then some clients also coming in who, even after time, are still having more challenging periods. Do you find that maybe stress impacts one person differently versus sleep maybe impacts one person more acutely? Nutrition really impacts someone more effectively? Do you see those differences amongst people, or in general, is it like nutrition really has to be number one, sleep has to be number two, stress management has to be number three? Is there sort of a protocol that you suggest for that?
Yeah, so all of that information would really be determined from their chart. So if you are charting your cervical mucus, your basal body temperature, if you're charting the quality of your period, so you can start to see how your needs are going to differ from someone else's. So for example, in the luteal phase, the main hormone that's there is progesterone. Progesterone is very sensitive to stress, blood sugar, and also if you are not supporting your follicular phase, you may have low progesterone in the next phase. And so low progesterone can actually make it really difficult to fall asleep. It can make it really difficult to manage your mood. It can make your period really painful, things like that. So if you go back in your chart and you're looking back, okay, so in my follicular phase on day 5, day 6, day 7, whatever, I had really, I had a pattern of being really high stress because maybe I was moving or maybe I got laid off my job or things like that. You can go back and pinpoint things like, oh, because I was so stressed out last week, it's now showing up in my luteal phase. So each person is different, and just because maybe this cycle requires more nutrition support, your next cycle may require more stress support. And so that's why I think charting is a really good thing, because I always say from a baseline perspective, nutrition and lifestyle can get you really far. But when it comes to the nitty-gritty stuff, if you're insufficient in a particular hormone or your period cycle, things like that, you can go back in your chart and identify, okay, just because I eat good and I work out, I still need help with my blood sugar, or I still need help managing my stress. And that can change over time for everyone.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I want to dive into the charting a little bit, but before we do, is there anything that you want to add to the conversation of cycle syncing or cyclical living? That's kind of what we've been talking about, right? Like matching our lifestyle with our cycles. Is there anything that you want to add on sort of those fronts?
Yeah, I think it's something that it's very mainstream to talk about cycle syncing, like your food and your nutrition and your workouts to your cycle. But it's something that I find the more you do it, you realize it impacts your entire, you can literally cycle sync your entire life. So you can cycle sync the way you work. You can cycle sync the way you go on vacation. For example, I always tell my girls, I'm like, go on vacation in your luteal phase, because you can have as much freaky time as you want and not worry, right? So
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So once you really get into it, you start to notice too, at least for me, from a personal standpoint, it also makes you really close to living in sync with nature, because you're tuning into your inner seasons. So it also makes you really tune into the outer seasons of the world too. And I think it's just, that's something that we just haven't been taught. We're taught to wake up every day, be the same person every day, grind 9 to 5. And then when you realize your cyclical nature has different needs, I feel like there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah, there is. And I didn't understand what cyclical living was until my own hormonal journey, which started around 2016. I was having really intense mood swings and flare ups, and cravings were insane around my period. I had insatiable appetite. I could eat bags and boxes of cereal and cookies and honestly not even be full, and have these like intense blowouts with my boyfriend, and then the next morning be like totally fine and happy. And I'm like, this is not normal. Like, this is not, and if it is normal, I don't want this life. Like, something has to change. And so I got off birth control, and I as a result of reading Alyssa Vitti's book, Woman Code, and I know you and I have had a conversation about this before, and I have her app that shows me, okay, menstrual cycle, this is the type of brain completing exercises you want to do. You want to start planning ahead, or you want to just focus on more completing tasks, or you don't want to have any meetings this week. Same thing with exercise and nutrition and like love life as well. So I didn't realize that there was so much that you could sync to your cycle until that book and that app, which is MyFlow. Is that anything that you reference yourself at all? Like the MyFlow app? Obviously you do your own cycle syncing, so you're like, I know what's up with my stuff. But rather, let me ask you, who are some women that you've learned from in your own cycle health that you see as leaders in the hormonal and menstrual health industry for women?
Yeah, so Alyssa Vitti, I mean, that's where I got started too, as I heard her on a podcast. She's incredible. So she has the book Woman Code, like you mentioned, and then she has a cycle syncing specific book called In the Flow. So she's great. And then there are a couple other people. So there's a woman, her name is Dr. Jolene Brighton. Mm-hmm. She's amazing, especially if you want to learn more about birth control and supporting your hormones coming off and things like that. She's great. There is a girl on Instagram. Her name is The Period Lab.
Okay.
Her name is Miranda. She's like a cycle syncing badass. Highly recommend her. Who else? There's...
And then, of course, yourself.
I mean, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. So, and each person, teaches cycle syncing a little different. Sometimes too, I mean, the baseline is very much the same, but I know some people teach cycle syncing where your ovulatory and menstrual phase are more like checkpoints rather than phases. So everybody has their own style. There's also, her name is Nicole Bendayan. She is also amazing and has just like a wealth of information. So they're all on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about sort of the type of clients that you like to work with, your niche, your specific forte, and how you bring in your cycle charting and cycle syncing and how women can work with you?
Yeah, so I do one-on-one coaching where it's very much just about helping you develop a lifestyle using your cycle, because your cycle has so much information. And so I work with women a lot, usually who are transitioning off of hormonal birth control. So helping them learn how to support their body and their hormones in that process, and then teaching them the Fertility Awareness Method at the same time, which is the all-natural form of birth control. I also work with women who are dealing with menstrual issues like PCOS and cyst and just really bad PMS and fibroids and things like that. And then also I don't want to say favorite because you shouldn't have favorites, right? But I think because I'm so passionate, I love working with clients that just want to learn how to use their cycle to make more health-informed decisions. So if you're just curious about how to like live the cyclical life, like I love that. And then I'll be building my course library this year. So I have a free course out now called What Does Your Period Say About You? So it teaches you, what does a healthy period look like, right? Because a lot of us weren't taught that. And then how can you use this information to do whatever you want with it? To be healthier, to use it as a form of birth control, to cycle sync, to have just a health record to take to your medical team, so that way you can pinpoint health issues, things like that. So that's something I recommend. And then I'll be coming out with Chemistry in about 2 weeks. It's going to be a self-paced course where it's basically for all of the things we didn't learn in health class as a woman. So how to nourish your hormones, how to be aware of your toxic load, how to manage stress, and then how to pinpoint those things using your chart if you want to. But I also want this to be very inclusive. So if you're on birth control, coming off, if you're off birth control, it's just basically going to include everything that you need. So.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. What's it called?
Chemistry.
Chemistry. Oh, so like feminine chemistry together?
Yes.
So clever. I love that so much. I can't wait to get my hands on that myself. So I didn't even ask you. So you were at a coffee shop with your friend. She was telling you about this thermometer. You got off birth control. You started cycle tracking. And then how did you go from there to being a holistic menstrual educator? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So when I got off birth control, let's see here. So after that, I was still very much in my career. And I started to notice that when I would get my period, that I just would have really crazy spouts of like anxiety and depression. So it's like I would get my period and I would call out sick because I'm just like, I literally feel like I can't leave my bed. Like it was paralyzing. This is so crazy. And that is something I didn't experience on birth control, because when you're on the pill, you're not having a true period. You're having just a withdrawal bleed. So there were a lot of things that came up for me having a period now and being like, I guess this is just part of being a woman. Hate that I'm calling out sick today, but oh well. Mm-hmm. And so then I knew towards the end of my career, I wanted to transition into wellness because it's just something I fell in love with on a personal basis. And so I got certified in holistic health, and I'm like, cool, like I know how to eat healthy. I'm doing like all the right things, but still the time of the month would come and I couldn't get out of bed. I'm like, what's happening? So that's when I discovered Elisa Vitti. And she's like, PMS isn't normal and blah, 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 and all this stuff.
Yes. I remember reading that and I was like, what? Wait, what are you talking about? Let's get to the bottom of this immediately.
Yeah. They're like, what is this snake oil you made?
Yes, yes. I loved it.
Yeah. So I found her work and I'm like, every woman needs to know this. How can I like just be like a messenger of this? Because through her work and things like that, I healed my own cycle. Like I don't have the major spouts of depression leading up to my period. My period also became way healthier. I didn't have cramps anymore. It was great. So I got certified from Fertility Education and Medical Management, where they basically teach you the entire physiology of the cycle and how it works, how to use it as birth control, things like that. So I kind of married the holistic health and the fertility education, and that's how we got Holistic Menstrual Health Educator.
Love it. That's amazing. Yeah, Elisa Vitti, there was a section in her book that was like, okay, if this is what's happening with your period, this is what could be happening with your hormones. And I remembered I was always getting like brown discharge before my actual period would start. And I was like, is this normal? Like, what's going on? And then in the book, it was like, if you're getting brown discharge before, and I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to start taking Chase Tree and I'm going to start doing, and I did. And for a while it helped. And it, I'm back to quote unquote normal now. Obviously things changed month to month too with stress and things like that. But that's incredible that you kind of married your two passions to also like growing up with food and absorbing that from your parents, and then putting together all these tasty things to support your cycle on social media that I love following, and now combining the holistic aspect to it and the menstrual educator. What do you feel like is the biggest need for women right now? Like, what do you see when you have conversations with women, whether it's in the DMs or in person? Like, what do women really need when it comes to their menstrual health right now? Is it education? Is it application? Is it getting off birth control? Like, what's the one thing you think?
I really do think it is education and then applying that education. I like to call it body literacy. So I think so much of how at least I've made decisions in my past and talking to other women, we make so many health decisions based on, sometimes what's trending or just the information we have at hand, right? It's kind of like, should I do Whole30? Should I do keto? Should I do yoga? Should I do, CrossFit, things like that? Because I feel like a lot of women, they're like, you want to feel your best, right? So you can live the life that you want to live. We're juggling 1,000 things. And I feel like if women just knew how to learn how to read the signs and signals of their body, which is tracking your cycle, looking at your period, women could make so much more informed and empowered decisions because you're going to know what your needs are. You're not going to have to fly blindly. You're not going to have to do this cleanse for 30 days and see if it works. You're already going to have that information. And all of that information you can use cycle after cycle after cycle to work with your medical care team if anything were to come up. I use it on a daily basis just to see, okay, like last cycle, I was really stressed out. And I realized when I'm stressed, my caffeine intake goes up and I have a shitty luteal phase. So you're just able to make more informed decisions in real time. And I think that would solve the problem everywhere across the board. I think more women would be inspired and empowered to get off birth control if that was the right thing for them, and to make healthier decisions if that's the right thing for them.
Wow. So powerful. And I'm so glad that you came on, because if I hadn't stumbled upon Alyssa Vitti, I mean, she really was the beginning of my cravings journey. Also, like meeting my moderation coach and then running into your Instagram profile and connecting with you. I'm just so happy that women have access to this type of information and can become empowered and can become more well-informed. Okay, so where can people find you? Tell us your social media handles and if you're on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or any of that.
So TikTok and Instagram is cervical_discourse. And then I also have a website, which is all linked from my social media profiles. So I would recommend going there if you're interested in the free course. And I also list like up and coming things that are coming. Sign up for my newsletter if you're on my website, because I'm going to send you lots of yummy recipes and all the period tea. So that's where you can find me.
I need to be on that newsletter stat.
Yes.
Stats. Perfect. I'm going to drop your information in our Facebook group with our clients too, to help them along with their month. Okay. So I'd like to end the podcast with one question, because obviously this is the Cravings Control for Fat Loss podcast. So what is the one food you love and crave that you could never say no to?
Pizza. 100%.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Never will I ever give that up.
Tell me like favorite topping, style. Give me all the details.
Yes, I like it all. Like I like a thin layer of pepperoni, some onions, some bell pepper, some Italian sausage, and I'm set. I'm happy.
Wow, yeah. That is a loaded Italian slice right there. Yeah. I'm like salivating now. That sounds so good.
Right? Maybe for dinner, that's might be what happening.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But to your point earlier that you made, I don't think the food in Florida is that good. And so I have yet to have pizza. I have yet to find like a salad bar that just makes regular salads. I mean, obviously the Cuban and Latin food is delicious, but you have to pick and choose.
Right.
So anything else that you want to share with us, Leah, before we hop off?
I'm just going to leave this tidbit because I do think it's important, but I would just say, if you are intimidated by any health journey that you're going on, whether like that can be a very big change for some people, you can start very small and you can use the information from your cycle to take small steps. And one thing that I really love about tracking your cycle is you do get to see gratification with the small changes that you're making in real time, which I think is really nice, because sometimes like if you're just not seeing results right away, it can be really disappointing. But your cycle is always communicating to you. So just making sure you're keeping that communication, I think, can be really helpful if you are on a health journey at all.
So what would you say is a first step for someone that if they want to get more connected to their body and to their cycle? Is it just observing their cervical mucus throughout the month and being like, oh, this is happening for a reason? Or maybe writing down their period symptoms, or obviously connecting with you on social media would be a great place to start too, and just having that support from a coach. But like for a beginner, what would you recommend?
Definitely start paying attention to your cervical mucus. You're going to have more dry days than mucus days, right? But even if you can just start to identify what a dry day is for you, which means nothing seen, nothing felt. So you can then identify when you do have mucus. And then when you do have mucus, maybe write down how you're feeling, right? And then again, when you're on your period, write down how you're feeling and just start to notice patterns. That's really what cycle tracking is keeping track of your patterns. And then just see where that takes you.
Well, that is a good first step. Thank you so much for being here. I had such a great conversation with you, and you can find Leah on Instagram. And if anyone has any questions, you can find us both on the gram. I'll see you soon, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.